A Bible Commentary on the Book of Daniel. By Brian Pepper. Introduction. It is believed that Daniel was born about 624 BC in the reign of Josiah king of Judah. Daniel was of the royal line of Judah, possibly a prince. He was 10 years old when he was carried into captivity and possibly over 90 years old when he died. Now a brief sketch of his career which reveals very interesting happenings. 1. He was carried captive to Babylon in the year 606 BC. 2. He spent 3 years in study in Babylon, Daniel chapter 1 verse 5, at the end of which he passed with honors. 3. Interpreted the king's dream at age 21, and was promoted to the position of Prime Minister of Babylon. Daniel chapter 2 verses 1 and 48. For when Babylon fell at the hand of Medo-Persia, Daniel did not lose his position, but became the chief president of the new realm. Daniel chapter 5 verse 31 and chapter 6 verses 1 through 3. 5. When through a plot he was cast into the den of lions, God miraculously delivered him, Daniel chapter 6. 6. His last and longest vision was given in 534 BC. Daniel chapter 10 verse 1. Historical setting of the book. 1. Kings of Judah during the life of Daniel: Josiah, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, Zedekiah. 2. Kings of Babylon: Nabopolassar, Nebuchadnezzar, Evil-Merodach, Neriglissar, Labrosorchid, Nabonidus, Belshazzar. 3. Kings of Medo-Persia: Darius, Cyrus. 4. Contemporary prophets: Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Obadiah. 5. Important events. First captivity. 606 BC. Second captivity. 599 BC. Third captivity and destruction of Jerusalem. 588 BC. Overthrow of Babylon. 538 BC. Cyrus's restoration decree. 536 BC. Daniel chapter 1 verse 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon unto Jerusalem, and besieged it. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim king of Judah. Jehoiakim was the 2nd son of Josiah. At the death of his father, the people made Jehoahaz the 4th son of Josiah, king in his father's place. After reigning for 3 months, Necho of Egypt, on returning from his first Mesopotamian campaign, deposed him and placed Jehoiakim on the throne. 2 Kings 23 verses 29 to 34. The Egyptian king changed his name from Eliakim, my God raises up, to Jehoiakim, Jehovah raises up. Jehoiakim's 3rd year according to the Jewish calendar, was from the autumn of 606 BC, to the autumn of 605 BC. When Nebuchadnezzar came against Jerusalem in Jehoiakim's 3rd year, he knew what to expect, for Jeremiah had warned, that the Babylonians were to conquer Israel and Judah. Came Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar was not king of Babylon at the time the prophet is writing, for the prophet is recording these events some 70 years later. Daniel is describing what took place when Nebuchadnezzar invaded Palestine, and the outcome of that invasion. Unto Jerusalem and besieged it. God speaking through his prophets, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and another prophet Uriah, proclaimed the message of doom. Uriah was executed, Jeremiah chapter 26 verses 20 to 23. Daniel chapter 1 verse 2. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim king of Judah into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim king of Judah into his hand. Thus were fulfilled the prophecy recorded by Isaiah, in Isaiah chapter 39 verses 6 and 7. Behold, the days come, that all that is in thine house, shall be carried to Babylon, and thy sons shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon, with part of the vessels of the house of God. Nebuchadnezzar no doubt took the most valuable and finest of the temple vessels, to be used in the service of his god Marduk, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his god. Shinar is a term used for Babylonia. To the house of his god. The chief god of the Babylonians was Marduk. Earlier on he was called Bel. At first he was only a local god, but rose in importance in the time of Hammurabi, when Babylon became the capital of an empire. From that time on, he was considered the chief of all the Babylonian gods. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his god. The treasure house was a building called the Palace Museum. Excavators have called this building the Palace Museum, because they found there many sculptures and inscriptions, collected from conquered cities. As in a modern museum, objects from different parts of the empire were also exhibited. Two very interesting statements from the spirit of prophecy describe what happened to the Ark of the Testament, at this crucial time in Israel's history. In view of the fast approaching destruction of the temple, some of the righteous in Jerusalem determined to place the sacred ark beyond the reach of ruthless hands of the invading armies. With mourning and sadness, they secretly carried the ark to a safe hiding place in a cave, where it is, yet hidden. It has never been disturbed since it was secreted. The book Prophets and Kings by Ellen G. White, page 453. Within the ark were the tables of stone, on which God had written the 10 Commandments with his own finger. Deuteronomy chapter 10 verses 1-5. Law preserved in ark, and he, Christ, gave unto Moses, when he had made an end of communicating with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tables of testimony, tables of stone, written by the finger of God. Nothing written on those tables could be blotted out. The precious record of the law was placed in the Ark of the Testament, and is still there, safely hidden from the human family. But in God's appointed time, he will bring forth these tables of stone, to be a testimony to all the world against the disregard of his commandments, and against the idolatrous worship of a counterfeit Sabbath. Manuscript 122, 1901. Daniel chapter 1 verse 3. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel and of the king's seed, and of the princes. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs. Ashpenaz, the meaning of this name is not certain, however it is thought to be Persian in origin. It is possible that this high officer was a Persian, for many foreigners won rank and honor in the service of the Chaldeans. Daniel chapter 1 verse 4. Children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. Children, rather youth or young men. Daniel had reached the age of 18 years. No blemish, physical soundness and a handsome form, were considered indispensable to officers of high rank among the ancient Orientals. Chaldeans, scholars who were proficient in sciences, such as mathematics, magic and astrology. Also they received a thorough training in the classical language and script of the country, that is the Babylonian language and Aramaic. Daniel chapter 1 verse 5. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat, and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Being members of the royal school for courtiers, the youth were given rations from the royal household. So nourishing them 3 years. These 3 years must be counted inclusively, for they represent, 1. Nebuchadnezzar's accession year, in which the Hebrew captives arrived in Babylon, and entered their training. 2. Nebuchadnezzar's year 1, which was the calendar year beginning the next New Year's Day, after his accession. 3. Nebuchadnezzar's year 2, in which Daniel graduated and stood before the king, and the year in which he interpreted the dream. Prophets and Kings, page 491. Daniel chapter 1 verse 6. Now among these were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Daniel means, God is my judge. It was a very common name among the Semitic people. Hananiah, meaning, Jehovah is gracious. Another common name. There are at least 14 individuals with that name mentioned in the Old Testament. Mishael, means, who belongs to God. Several Bible characters with this name. Azariah, meaning, Jehovah helps, a name that frequently appears in the Bible. Whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. Since proficiency in the cuneiform script, with its hundreds of characters, was not easy to acquire, a good educational background, a natural ability to learn easily, and the gift of picking up a new language readily, would be deemed desirable prerequisites for acceptance into the royal school for future courtiers. Daniel chapter 1 verse 7. Unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah, of Shadrach, and to Mishael, of Meshach, and to Azariah, of Abednego. Belteshazzar. The first syllable, Bel, refers to Bel, the popular name of Babylon's chief god, Marduk. It is believed it means, Bel, protect his, the king's, life. Shadrach. All attempts to explain the name, which does not seem to be of Babylonian origin, have so far failed. Meshach. The meaning is not known either, it is not a Babylonian name. Abednego. Servant of, the god, Nabu. Daniel chapter 1 verse 8. But Daniel purposed in his heart, that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank, therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs, that he might not defile himself. He would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat. There are several reasons why a Hebrew would not wish to eat of the royal food. 1. The Babylonians, like other heathen nations, ate unclean foods. 2. The beasts had not been properly killed, according to the Levitical law in Leviticus chapter 17, verses 14 and 15. 3. A portion of the animals eaten was first offered as a sacrifice to pagan gods. Acts chapter 15 verse 29. 4. The use of luxurious and unhealthful food and drink was contrary to strict principles of temperance. 5. Daniel and his friends wished to avoid a flesh food diet. Daniel chapter 1 verse 9. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. Firstly, the blessings of God were upon them, especially Daniel. Like Joseph, who won favor among his enemies, Daniel also won the respect of his superiors. He must have been a very personable young man. Daniel chapter 1 verse 10. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who hath appointed your meat and your drink, for why should he see your faces worse liking, than the children which are of your sort? Then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king. The chief eunuch would be held responsible, if those under his care deteriorated physically. He had reason to fear, for later on we notice the severity of King Nebuchadnezzar, in punishing those who failed in their duties. Daniel chapter 1 verse 11. Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Melzar means, guardian, or warden. Although Ashpenaz had been friendly and sympathetic to Daniel's request, he nevertheless hesitated to help the young captive. So Daniel went to the official who was the immediate tutor, and placed before him his request. Daniel chapter 1 verse 12. Prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. 10 days. This seems a short period of time, in which to produce any appreciable change in appearance and physical vigor. But habits of strict temperance had already provided Daniel and his companions with sound constitutions. Prophets and Kings page 482. In the case of Daniel and his 3 companions, divine power was united with human effort, and the result was remarkable. Pulse to eat, food derived from plants, such as cereals and vegetables. According to Jewish tradition, berries and dates were also part of this food. Daniel chapter 1 verse 13. Then let our countenances be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat, and as thou sayest, deal with thy servants. Melzar felt certain that an abstemious diet would make these young men pale and sickly in appearance, whereas the rich food of the king's table would make them healthy and robust in appearance. Daniel chapter 1 verse 14. So he consented to them in this matter, and proved them 10 days. From their childhood, these young men had been trained in strict habits of temperance. They were well aware of the detrimental effects of a stimulating diet, so they determined to resist any indulgence in appetite. Daniel chapter 1 verse 15. And at the end of 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh, than all the children which did eat of the portion of the king's meat. God honored these young men, because of their unswerving purpose to do what was right. Daniel chapter 1 verse 16. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat, and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse. Melzar was well satisfied as he looked on those ruddy-faced young men, for they were the picture of health. Daniel chapter 1 verse 17. As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Not only were these young men tested as far as diet was concerned, but the instruction they received was also a test of faith. The wisdom of the Chaldeans was allied with idolatry and pagan practices, who mixed sorcery with science, and learning with superstition. How these Hebrews managed to maintain their integrity, we do not know, nor are we told. But despite all these corrupting influences, they held fast to their faith and loyalty in God. The only way we can understand how they did it, is by noticing their conduct in face of trial. They made a firm resolution to remain true to God whatever happened. They recognized that they had to depend on God fully. They made a firm stand right from the start in the question of diet. They were men of prayer, visions and dreams. While Daniel's 3 companions were endowed with exceptional mental qualities, and equaled him in their loyalty to God, Daniel was a prophet. He was called of God to do a special work, and was wonderfully blessed with the gift of prophecy. Daniel chapter 1 verse 18. Now at the end of the days that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. The young apprentices were to be trained 3 years, in order to stand before the king, and it was, at the end of the days, specified, that they were brought before the king for examination. Daniel chapter 1 verse 19. And the king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. Communed with them. The questions asked may have required the explanation of riddles, which has always been a favored sport in the court life of Oriental countries. Also the solving of mathematical problems, in which the Babylonians were masters, as their documents reveal, or a demonstration of the ability to read and write the difficult cuneiform script. The superior wisdom of Daniel and his youthful companions was not the result of chance or destiny, or even a miracle. The young men applied themselves diligently and conscientiously to their studies, and God blessed their endeavors. Daniel chapter 1 verse 20. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding, that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers, that were in all his realm. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding, Daniel and his friends excelled the men of their profession in matters of exact science, such as astronomy and mathematics, and in matters of linguistic studies. They had mastered cuneiform writing, the Babylonian and Aramaic languages, and the Aramaic square script. Magician. This is not a Babylonian name, but comes from the Hebrew Bible Pentateuch. Astrologers. Divination, magic, exorcism, and astrology were widespread among the ancient peoples, but in some countries like Babylonia, they were practiced by the men of science. It is a mistake to assume that the wise men of Babylon were only diviners and magicians. Their astronomical knowledge had attained to a surprisingly high degree of development, though the peak of Babylonian astronomy came after the Persian conquest. Astronomers were able to predict both lunar and solar eclipses by computation. Their mathematical skill was highly developed. They employed formulas, whose discovery is erroneously but generally attributed to Greek mathematicians. Daniel chapter 1 verse 21. And Daniel continued even unto the 1st year of King Cyrus. This does not mean that Daniel's life did not extend beyond the first year of Cyrus, for in chapter 10 it states that Daniel had a vision in the third year of Cyrus.